Tower Defense Simulator has a lot of rare logbooks, including some evergreen logbooks. I reckon the hardest evergreen logbook to get in Tower Defense Simulator is probably the Health Cultist, because it appears once in hardcore mode, not at the end, granted, so the Void Reaver may be considered harder because it is the final boss in hardcore mode, and you're more likely to have less Void Reaver kills than Health Cultist kills, but the important thing is, the Health Cultist has only 8,000 health, meaning that the chance of getting it through a pity kill in hardcore mode is around 1.08%, and do bear in mind that this cannot be boosted by Scholar skill in the skills tree, because hardcore mode disables all skills, including the Scholar skill. So, while the Health Cultist has a 1.08% chance of being gotten through random chance, the Void Reaver has a 15% chance of being gotten through random chance because of its high health, 1.2 million. Any enemy above 100,000 health has a guaranteed 15% chance of being dropped no matter its health. Below that, I think it's scaled linearly, it's a very complicated word, so that enemies closer to 1 health have around a 1% chance, or even a 0.5%, no, well actually 0.8% chance of being dropped, compared to an enemy with 50,000 health, which has roughly a 7.5% chance of being dropped right now. Hence why the Health Cultist is likely going to be the hardest evergreen enemy to get its logbook for, because you're very likely going to need 60 kills to get the Health Cultist logbook, although for me, I actually got the Health Cultist logbook around the 14th kill of the Health Cultist, when the chances of getting the Health Cultist logbook was much rarer before the developers buffed the random chance rates of getting it by 3 times. However, in Tower Defense Simulator, evergreen logbooks are likely not to be the rarest logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator. The rarest logbooks are those that you can no longer get. So, for example, a logbook that you can no longer get is something like the Streamer logbook. The Streamer logbook is a logbook that only appears during April Fool's events, when the developers, basically, they allow you to say dop dop yes yes into any easy mode game, and which makes you spawn into Headache Headquarters, which spawns in a bunch of random brain rot enemies, meaning that you can actually get the Streamer logbook once a year. Well, I'll say once a year, it's set 7 days for one time per year, but this means that the Streamer logbook is significantly harder to get when you compare it to the likes of, say, the Wastewalker logbook, which you can get all year round. But then you get something like the Elite Boomer. The Elite Boomer was a former enemy in Fallen mode before being removed, when Fallen mode was slightly reworked to be shorter in its length, and because of that, the Elite Boomer was one of those enemies that the developers removed, meaning that you can no longer get this logbook, and hence it's listed as an exclusive enemy. However, before these changes, the Elite Boomer was actually quite a common enemy to appear in Fallen mode, so I reckon that this isn't one of the 5 rarest logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator. There may be some cases for other enemies in Tower Defense Simulator, namely event enemies, to be one of the top 5 rarest logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator. I'll mention maybe the Roblox Deathwalker, since I believe that event, it lasted only 9 days, meaning that you only had effectively 9 days of getting the Roblox Deathwalker logbook. It had a 15% chance of being dropped, but easy mode was significantly easy enough that I think that there was a chance that you could get its logbook. Actually, I don't think easy mode for the Roblox Deathwalker had the full 100,000 health complement. No, it didn't. It had 40,000 health in easy mode. I think impossible mode was actually the easiest way of getting the Roblox Deathwalker logbook. I'm not sure, I forgot if you could actually solo it in impossible mode, but if you were easily grinding it out, the Roblox Deathwalker logbook, I'd reckon you'd need around 40 kills to get it through the pity kill logbook system, or having like a 60% chance of getting it through random kills. And obviously, you probably could get unlucky, and you'd probably need to kill the Roblox Deathwalker 60 times to get it through pity kills. Other logbooks include the Frost Spirit, the final boss when it came to the Operation Ice event, and the Nerd Duck logbook, which was the final boss in the Ducky Revenge event, do bearing in mind that it only appeared in hard mode at the very end. You could easily get the Ducky Doom the 3rd logbook, although that being said, I think I got the Nerd Ducky logbook before I got the Ducky Doom the 3rd logbook. Of the recent Null and Void event, the Riftwalker logbook is likely to be the hardest, given that you had like the shortest amount of time to get it, around 3 weeks, whereas I think the Corrupted Commander logbook was actually the second to last logbook that I actually got in the null and void events. The hardest, or the last one I got, was actually the Corrupted Accelerator, because when I was grinding out for the Rift Walker and the Cronus logbooks, which Cronus is also probably one of those hard to get logbooks in the null and void event, I didn't get enough pity kills to get the null accelerator logbook. So actually the null accelerator logbook was the hardest for me to get, but I reckon it's either probably going to be Cronus or the Rift Walker that many people are missing from their inventories when it comes to the null and void event. But I don't think any of those are the 5th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator. I reckon that the hardest logbook to get, well, not the hardest logbook to get, but the most time-consuming logbook to get was the tutorial boss logbook. For this, you required 20 kills in tutorial mode before the update, which changed the amount of pity kills that you got to 60, in which after that you would very likely need 60 kills to get the tutorial boss logbook. Now this is not to be confused with the Brutes logbook. They are exactly the same enemy, except the Brute actually has abilities. They have the same model, but they don't have the same statistics. Now, the reason why I say the tutorial boss logbook is the 5th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator is because the only way to get it was to repeat tutorial mode through this button here. Now, you can't get this logbook anymore because the tutorial boss no longer appears in tutorial mode. Now, obviously, some dedicated logbook hunters, they were able to get the tutorial boss logbook relatively easily with 20 kills. However, after that, you required 60 kills. It actually took a significant amount of time to get it. When it was 20 kills to get, I'd reckon it would take you 1.5 hours to get the tutorial boss logbook. But with the changes to 60 pity kills, I reckon it will take you 4.5 hours to get it. With no reward, by the way, because if you replay tutorial mode, you get 0 rewards. So effectively, you're only playing tutorial mode to get the tutorial boss logbook. Now, do bear in mind that there was a pity kill element to the tutorial boss logbook. However, because of the tutorial boss's low health, around 1250 health, it meant that effectively it had around a 0.96% chance of being dropped. This means that the chance of getting the tutorial boss logbook through pity kills, by the way, was around 44%. The probability of not getting the logbook, so X being less than 1, was 56%, meaning that for most people, or I reckon a majority of people, you required 60 kills to get the tutorial boss logbook. If we change this down to 40 kills to get the tutorial boss logbook, there is around a 20% chance that you actually get, there's around a 22% chance of getting the tutorial boss logbook through random chance. These odds are quite low, and I reckon I actually got the tutorial boss logbook through random chance actually. One of these, right, 22% of people, around 40 kills. But, as stated previously, for the majority of players, you would require 60 pity kills to get the tutorial boss through pity kill drop rates. Some players say that you could boost these skills through Scholar. However, when it came to tutorial mode, the developers actually banned skills in tutorial mode, meaning that you could not boost the drop rates of the tutorial boss through Scholar. Again, another reason why Scholar is pretty much a useless skill. For events and for like game modes which actually have rare logbooks, Scholar is normally disabled, meaning that for when the Scholar skill actually may make a difference, a slight difference, a 3% difference in the highest of circumstances, it basically has 0 effect and you've just wasted 36,000 coins. Now, logbooks were first added in December 2024, and until the 25th of June 2025, the dummy boss only had 250 health, meaning that it was ever so more likely that you could only get the tutorial boss logbook through pity kills, effectively meaning that you would have needed to grind out 4.5 hours to get the pity kill logbook, and unless you got the tutorial boss logbook before the 5th of February 2025, because that's when logbook drop rates for the pity kill changed from 20 kills to 60 kills. Now, that means that there was a 3-month window where you would have needed to invest 1.5 hours into Tower Defense Simulator just to get one logbook, and then after that, where you would have needed 4.5 hours to get the dummy boss logbook. From around February until September, effectively 7 months. So yes, there was a period of time, there was around 9 months where you could get the dummy boss logbook, but given the amount of time and effort that it would have required to get the dummy boss logbook, I think not that many players actually did go for it, and only those who realised that you could get the dummy boss logbook actually did get it, and then it is now too late for anyone else to realise that you could actually get the dummy boss logbook. So I reckon that the tutorial boss is the 5th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator, but what do I think is the 4th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator? Well, I think it's the Mechanical Rot logbook. Now, interestingly enough, the developers, due to a bug, have disabled spawning in the modern Mechanical Rot into sandbox mode. Basically, the only use of logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator is spawning them into sandbox mode, but you can only spawn in legacy logbooks, basically any enemies that were coded before around 2023, if you have admin mode in Tower Defense Simulator. It does mean that you can spawn in the Mechanical Rot Legacy version if you got the modern Mechanical Rot logbook, but only if you have the admin mode Game Pass, which has been recently renamed to the Sandbox Plus Game Pass. Now, the Mechanical Rot's enemy, that appeared only in the Halloween live event, but for the second part of it, when the developers replaced the enemy with the, I reckon, the 3rd rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator, or maybe even the 2nd rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator, with the Mechanical Rot, which I think is the 4th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator. The reason why I think it's the 4th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator is because the developers gave you a 7-hour window where you could get the Mechanical Rot logbook. There was a 15% chance that you get the Mechanical Rot logbook through drop rates in the Halloween live event. But since it lasted 7 hours, it means that you were extremely time constrained of actually getting the Mechanical Rot logbook, and I only got it actually on the 3rd try of grinding out the Mechanical Rot logbook. So I reckon even if you were online at the time when the admin abuse live event was happening, there was around a 50% chance that you didn't get the logbook. And given the fact that it was only for 1 day and only for 7 hours, I think the Mechanical Rot logbook is the 4th rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator. And obviously, to pour salt in the wound, you can't actually spawn in the modern Mechanical Rot logbook. You can, well, Mechanical Rot enemy, sorry. You can spawn in the legacy Mechanical Rot, but that's it. And this version of the Mechanical Rot, I think, is slightly broken. It can shoot enemies-ish, but it looks like it's having a seizure, and it also cannot stun enemies. But at the very least, it can walk. It still has the same-ish immunities that Mechanical Rot had back in the day with no burn and boss. But as you can see, if there's an enemy nearby to this legacy version of the Mechanical Rot, it just stops in its tracks and it's unable to move until you sell the tower, where it looks like it is able to use its animation, but it still is stuck in place. This is what the modern version of the Mechanical Rot actually looks like. The version that you're able to spawn into the sandbox mode after you get the modern version of the Mechanical Rot logbook looks like this, and it originally appeared in the legacy Hidden Wave, but has since been removed from Tower Defense Simulator since 2021, hence why the only way of getting this version of the Mechanical Rot is to spawn in through the Mechanical Rot modern logbook, which you could only get in 2025 since the other enemy was removed in 2021, way before logbooks were added to Tower Defense Simulator. Now then, as for the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st rarest logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator, those logbooks are so rare that I don't have it. Those are the only 3 logbooks, plus the Champion Templar logbook, that I don't have in Tower Defense Simulator. So for this, we'll need to go to another person. So this person in Tower Defense Simulator is actually able to spawn in all of the missing logbooks that I do not have, the first of which being the Frost Spawner, as you can see here. Okay, so when it comes to the Frost Spawner, as you can see here, you can spawn it in and it does move while you spawn it in. However, as you can see, it has 0 health, meaning that you can't kill it, even if you use the Pumpkin Bomb. This was the traditional method of making sure that the Frost Spawner could actually be killed. Basically, what the Pumpkin Bomb did was that it removed all the immunities that the Frost Spawner had. Pertinently, the Frost Spawner had the immunities of God and no target. Now, no target wasn't that much of a big deal since you could probably use the Gatling gun to target the Frost Spawner. There were also some other methods of targeting the Frost Spawner, even though it had no target, such as using bleeding from like other towers, such as the Slasher, I think, even though I don't think the Slasher could actually hit multiple enemies, but you could do explosives, for example, which could indirectly hit the Frost Spawner. And you could also use the Pumpkin Bomb, ironically enough, to apply bleed damage, but the Frost Spawner itself, it wouldn't be able to be damaged unless you remove the God immunity, which you could do through a 20% chance with the Pumpkin Bomb. The Pumpkin Bomb would apply a 50,000 health to the Frost Spawner, meaning that when it was spawned into Tower Defense Simulator, or when the immunities were removed, it would have a 2.5% chance of dropping randomly, and at the time there was a 20 pity kill for its logbook, meaning that most people probably ended up getting the pity kill, so they required 20 kills for the Frost Spawner to get its logbook. Now, however, you obviously cannot damage the Frost Spawner since the Pumpkin Bombs no longer remove the immunities in the Frost Spawner. Now, obviously, with the Frost Spawner in Tower Defense Simulator now, you can see that because you can't remove no target and God from the tower, from the enemy, towers can't target it and you can't damage it through any means, and it has 0 health. The only enemy in Tower Defense Simulator to have 0 health when you spawn it in, and meaning you can't actually kill it. Now, when it came to units in the Frost event, the Frost Spawner could actually kill them, but here, yes, they can still kill units in Tower Defense Simulator. So if you spawn in a Frost Spawner, yes, all your units are dead. I do believe that this is a high amount of health, which actually damages or kills the molten monster outright, as you can see here. So yes, the Frost Spawner is indeed quite a powerful enemy to spawn into Tower Defense Simulator. Now then, as for the Corrupted Conserver, this was the boss for the Hexscape event Night 2. Now, back then, you weren't able to get logbooks from enemies, so how are you able to get this logbook? Well, it appeared during the live events for the recent Halloween 2025. You were able to kill the Corrupted Conserver in the first of the 2 live events that the developers made for this live event. However, you only had 1.5 hours to actually kill the Corrupted Conserver, and it's very likely that because it was only a 50% chance of actually killing the Corrupted Conserver, and the most that anyone could actually kill the Corrupted Conserver in the 1.5 hours was around 3 times due to the admin abuse that the developers were causing, I think that many people, even if they were trying to get the Corrupted Conserver logbook, weren't able to get it. Now, with the Hexscape event and all other events after it planning to return to Tower Defense Simulator, there may be a chance where you can get the Corrupted Conserver and the Frost Spawner logbooks. However, when it comes to the Frost Spawner, I think it's going to be slightly more difficult than the Corrupted Conserver. I reckon the Corrupted Conserver, when it is finally added to this new story mode that the developers are planning, I think it'll be relatively easy-ish compared to other enemies to actually get logbooks. Now, interestingly enough, this Corrupted Conserver can actually spawn in Actor 2s, which I don't think it was able to do so during the Hexscape event. I believe that this was a modified version, or it was modified specifically for the live events. But this does mean, interestingly enough, that if the Corrupted Conserver were to return to Tower Defense Simulator, there may be a chance where it spawns in Actor 2s. These are Actor 2s, there's Actor 1s, Actor 3s as well, but it only can spawn in Actor 2s. Meaning that in the future, if the Corrupted Conserver logbook or the Corrupted Conserver enemy were to return to Tower Defense Simulator as part of the Hexscape return, I think there is a chance that you could also get the Actor 2 logbooks, even though it appeared in the 2023 event for the Lunar Overture event. So the Frost Spawner logbook, also known as the Siege Engine logbook, is a rare logbook to get because it was very difficult to get the Frost Spawner logbook. Basically, when the developers first added the Siege Engine to Tower Defense Simulator, there was no clear method of actually getting the Siege Engine through logbooks. It was only around 2 weeks before the event actually concluded where people realised that you could use the Pumpkin Bomb to actually get rid of the God and no target attributes from the Siege engine, meaning that there was roughly around a 2-week period where people were heavily grinding out the Siege engine logbook. I tried to, but I only ended up killing the Siege engine around 5 times, and I didn't get the Siege engine through the random chance that it afforded to me. And also, you have to remember that the pumpkin bomb was actually kind of a rare consumable to get, because most people, including Shane the shadowy figure, wasted all of his pumpkin bombs on useless things such as boosted the corrupted conserver enemy to bloated, meaning that you know, you could actually kill a 3.6 million health boss. Speaking of the corrupted conserver, yes, it only appeared in the live events for 1.5 hours, meaning that there was a significantly higher chance of getting the corrupted conserver logbook, but since it was only lasted for 1.5 hours, the time window when you could get it was significantly smaller. And also, because it wasn't a convenient time for most of the world's players, which actually reside in Asia, not America, I think that for many people, they didn't get the corrupted conserver logbook, whereas dedicated players actually got the Siege engine logbook, which means that I think the Siege engine logbook is perhaps the 3rd rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator, so slightly rarer than the Mechanical Rot's logbook, but slightly more common than the corrupted conserver logbook. But I think that there is one more enemy that actually is more rare than the corrupted conserver, and in fact I know it's more rare than the corrupted conserver by a country mile. You could also argue that the Mechanical Rot's logbook is slightly more rare than the Siege engine logbook, given that the Siege engine logbook appeared in the game for 2 weeks, or the method of getting the Siege engine logbook was known for 2 weeks, compared to the Mechanical Rot, which lasted for only 7 hours. But I'm going to leave that debate up in the air. Given the fact that I have the Mechanical Rot logbook and not the Siege engine logbook, I think the order goes tutorial boss, Mechanical Rot, Siege engine, and corrupted conserver, whereas some players may say something else completely different for the 5th. They may say Siege engine for the 4th, Mechanical Rot for the 3rd, and corrupted conserver for the 2nd, but the first one I don't think is up for debate. So I think the enemy with the rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator is the imposter enemy. The person that I was speaking to during the time when I was spawning in enemies also said that when it came to the imposter enemies, that 4 imposter enemies were spawned in by the developers at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I assume that is New York time, which is the time zone that the developers live in every single match, including PvP mode, hardcore mode, etc. People actually got wins in PvP mode because they spawned in a bunch of imposters before the Halloween Part 1 event, but interestingly enough, if you were to get into a game mode which actually allowed for logbook drop rates, so that's not PvP mode because PvP mode bans it and sandbox mode also bans it, it means that you did have a very slight chance of getting the imposter logbook. Now, I thought that enemies spawned in through the admin console were unable to be dropped as logbooks. It certainly is the case where enemies spawned in by admins, they aren't able to be gotten as logbooks. So for example, Kyo once spawned in the Krampus enemy into the live events October 2 weeks after or 1 week after, I forgot when, I think October 11th. I was unable to get its logbook, firstly because I was unable to kill it, because Kyo actually killed it, but because it was spawned in through the admin panel, you can't actually get to logbook. The only other case where you can't get logbooks are in PvP mode and in sandbox mode. Now, the imposter enemy actually first appeared in the April Fool's Day 2021 event-ish thing. However, as you may know, logbooks did not exist in Tower Defense Simulator. However, there have been some cases where the developers have spawned in the imposter as a commands-only enemy that you can only spawn in if you have a developer in your game. So that's from the 6th of March 2024. You may also recall that the imposter enemy gave out the suspicious badge when you killed it back in April Day 2021. If the developers spawned in the imposter enemy after the 13th of March 2024, then you were able to get the suspicious badge. However, since around, I think, September 2024, the suspicious badge was removed from the game's page, meaning that it was impossible to get the imposter badge since this time. During 2024, the developers only spawned in the imposter for a handful of games, including mine, which I got the suspicious badge for my alternative account, which are on WIKI colours. And ever since 2024, there has been an unwritten rule by the developers where they do not spawn in anything into random games for fear of like favoritism and professionalism within their ranks. However, this excludes anything related to admin abuse, which is where the imposter logbook comes into play, because before the first release of the night in the null and void event, the developers apparently spawned in 4 imposter enemies as, I don't know, a test, meaning that there was 4 opportunities of getting the imposter enemy logbook. However, because the developers didn't announce a plan to spawn in the imposter enemy, and because nobody was prepared for the imposter enemy being spawned in, not less 4 of them, basically nobody who wanted to get the imposter enemy logbook had any plans of doing anything on the time when the developers spawned in the imposter enemy. And because it was a random night when the developers spawned into the game, the imposter enemies, nobody was prepared to actually get the imposter enemy logbook. Those who actually did get the imposter enemy logbook likely got it through sheer dumb luck. Now, this isn't to say that someone who did get the imposter logbook is lost to history. So, for example, this person here, from this person on the Discord server, Miggy12213, proved that they have the imposter logbook by spawning into sandbox mode, as seen here, but additionally by having the logbook entry in the index, which is basically blank because I think the model fails to load in, and it just has the basic statistics of 99 health and 25 speed, which is the fastest enemy in Tower Defense Simulator. You may already know that. Now, because the imposter enemy actually only has 99 health, the probability of getting the imposter logbook is actually going to be pretty close to 0.9%, which is the absolute lowest chance of getting an enemy's logbook if they have 1 health. And sure, there is a possibility that you can boost this through having maximum scholar skill, but because the scholar skill can only boost a logbook's drop rate by 20%, 0.9 by 1.2 is 1.08%, meaning that the chance of getting the imposter's logbook if you have the scholar skill maxed out is around 1.1%. And this boost may not even be applied if you are in a game mode which has disabled the scholar skill. The only game mode where I can think that this may occur is in hardcore mode, but additionally in tutorial mode for anyone trying to grind out, I don't know, logbooks in tutorial mode, given the fact, which I think no one is actually doing, given the fact that the tutorial boss has been removed. But for players in tutorial mode, if you were playing that game mode during the time when the imposter enemies were being run through, 4 of them, it would mean that your chances of getting the imposter logbook was only at around 0.9% rather than the 1.1% if you had maximum scholar applied, which means that the probability of getting the scholar logbook is, in decimal term, 0.011. The number of trials that the imposter enemy had was 4. 4 imposter enemies were spawned in, and the number of successes we're assuming is 1. So the probability of getting the imposter enemy logbook if you were on the game at 3 AM in the time when the developers spawned the enemies in before the release of Night 1 Hexscape event is around a 4.3% chance. And do bear in mind that at the time that the game was active, you can't do it in PvP mode because they disable logbooks, and you can't do it in sandbox mode because that also disables logbooks. Now, assuming that everyone active at the time when the developers spawned in the imposter enemies, there were around, I want to say, 20,000 players at an absolute maximum, meaning around 800 players at a total maximum has the imposter logbook. But given the fact that not everyone at the time had the maximum scholar skill, and not everyone at the time was playing a game mode where the imposter enemy could spawn in and drop a logbook, I think the maximum amount of players that has the logbook for the imposter enemy is 500. So this logbook is so rare that I think at any given point in Tower Defense Simulator's playtime, say right now 8,201 players, there may be only 1 or 2 players with the imposter logbook, whereas when it comes to like the dummy boss logbook, there may be up to 50 players. When it comes to the mechanical rots, frost spawner and the corrupted conserver, there may be anywhere between 20 and 10 players with those logbooks, but the imposter logbook is so rare that there may be a point in time when everyone with the imposter logbook has their account terminated or removed from Tower Defense Simulator to the point where the imposter logbook can no longer be spawned in. So I think this person in Tower Defense Simulator's Discord server may be one of maybe 20 players in that Discord server that has the imposter logbook. So that person, congratulations to you. You have the rarest logbook in Tower Defense Simulator. But to everyone else who may have 100%ed Tower Defense Simulator in all of its entirety, all of the name tags, all of the towers, all of the skins, I can guarantee you have not 100%ed all of the logbooks in Tower Defense Simulator, because the imposter enemy is such a hard thing to get, and I reckon the people with the imposter logbook are also the same people that may have been missing the frost spawner logbook, the mechanical rot logbook, and the corrupted conserver logbook, meaning that I don't think anyone in Tower Defense Simulator has 100%ed all of the logbooks, or maintainable, ever in Tower Defense Simulator.